Before we start, tell me where you are listening from in the comments. Maybe you are someone who thinks warnings about life and death are just dramatic exaggerations. Maybe you assume that people with success and resources have nothing to fear and therefore no real wisdom about danger. Maybe you have never considered that sometimes the most important warnings come not from experts or authorities, but from someone who has learned the hard way what really matters when everything else falls apart. This conversation is for you. I want to tell you about a warning that has been keeping me awake at night for months. Not because I'm uncertain about what I need to say, but because I know that once I share this truth, it will change how you see your relationships, your priorities, and your daily choices in ways that might be uncomfortable but could literally save your life. This is not about business risks or financial predictions or any of the external threats that people usually worry about. This is about something much more immediate and personal, a danger to your well-being and the well-being of everyone you love that is hiding in plain sight, growing stronger every day, and destroying lives, while most people remain completely unaware of what's happening to them. Today I want to share this warning because staying silent would be a betrayal of every person who has trusted me to be honest about challenges that affect all of our lives, even when that honesty requires confronting truths that most people would prefer to ignore. The warning I need to give you is this: you are living your life in a way that is slowly killing you. And you don't realize it because the danger comes not from any single dramatic threat, but from the gradual erosion of everything that makes life worth living. I'm not talking about physical health risks, though those are real too. I'm talking about something more fundamental and more devastating: the systematic destruction of your capacity for genuine human connection, meaningful purpose, and inner peace that happens when you accept a way of living that treats you like a machine rather than a human being. Every day, you make choices that seem reasonable and necessary in the moment, but that are actually part of a pattern that is stealing your life from you, one decision at a time. You're so focused on managing immediate demands and meeting external expectations that you're not noticing how these choices are changing who you are and what you're capable of experiencing. The danger I'm warning you about is not some future catastrophe that might happen to you. It's something that is happening to you right now, today, in ways that are so gradual and so normalized by society that you've learned to accept them as just how life is, rather than recognizing them as symptoms of a way of living that is fundamentally incompatible with human flourishing. Here's what I see happening to people everywhere, including people I care about, including myself, before I recognized what was happening. You're being trained to live in a state of constant stress, distraction, and emotional numbness that prevents you from accessing the experiences that make life meaningful and satisfying. You wake up already thinking about everything you need to accomplish, everything you're worried about, everyone you might disappoint if you don't meet their expectations. You spend your days moving from one task to the next, one obligation to the next, one crisis to the next, without ever having time to pause and consider whether any of this activity is actually contributing to a life you want to be living. Most dangerously, you've learned to suppress the part of yourself that questions whether this is really how you want to spend the limited time you have on Earth. You've been taught that dissatisfaction with your current life is a character flaw rather than valuable information about what needs to change. The warning I'm giving you is based on what I've learned from watching this pattern destroy relationships, drain the joy out of achievements, and leave successful, capable people feeling empty and exhausted despite having everything they thought they wanted. I've seen marriages fail not because people stopped loving each other, but because they became so focused on managing their lives that they forgot how to connect with each other as human beings rather than as partners in a complex logistical operation. I've seen parents who love their children deeply but who are so consumed with providing for them and managing their schedules that they miss the opportunity to actually know them, to enjoy their company, to be present for the moments that make childhood precious and fleeting. I've seen people achieve professional success that they worked toward for decades, only to discover that the achievement brought them no satisfaction because they had spent so many years focused on reaching the goal that they had forgotten how to experience joy, accomplishment, or pride in their work. Most heartbreaking of all, I've seen people reach the end of their lives with deep regret not about their failures, but about how little of their lives they had actually lived consciously, how many moments they had missed because they were thinking about something else, how many opportunities for connection and meaning they had sacrificed for achievements that ultimately felt hollow. The specific danger I need to warn you about is that you are probably living your life in a way that prioritizes efficiency over humanity, productivity over presence, achievement over fulfillment, and external validation over internal peace. You've been taught to measure your worth by how much you accomplish, how busy you are, how well you meet other people's expectations, and how successfully you manage the complex demands of modern life. But these measures have almost nothing to do with the experiences that actually create happiness, meaning, and satisfaction. The people who are happiest and most fulfilled are not necessarily those who achieve the most or who manage their lives most efficiently. They are people who have learned to live with intention, presence, and genuine connection to themselves and others. They make choices based on what they actually value rather than what they think they should value. They spend time on activities that feel meaningful to them rather than just activities that seem necessary or impressive. They cultivate relationships that provide genuine intimacy and support rather than just relationships that are convenient or beneficial. Most importantly, they have learned to pay attention to their own inner experience, their thoughts, feelings, needs, and desires, rather than living their lives entirely in response to external demands and expectations. The reason this warning could save your life is not because you're in immediate physical danger, but because the way most people are living is so disconnected from what human beings actually need to thrive that it creates a kind of slow-motion spiritual and emotional death. You can spend decades being successful according to external measures while becoming increasingly disconnected from yourself, your relationships, and any sense of purpose or meaning that comes from within rather than from achievements or recognition. Let me tell you about the moment when I first recognized this danger in my own life, because I think you might be experiencing something similar right now and need to understand what's at stake if you don't make changes. It was a Tuesday evening about 3 years ago. I had just finished what by any objective measure had been one of the most successful days of my professional life. Multiple projects had reached important milestones, several major decisions had been made that would benefit thousands of people, and I had received recognition for work that I had been pursuing for years. But as I sat in my car in the parking garage after that triumphant day, I realized that I felt absolutely nothing. No satisfaction, no pride, no sense of accomplishment. Just emptiness and exhaustion, and a vague anxiety about everything I still needed to do tomorrow and the day after that. I tried to remember the last time I had felt genuinely happy, not just relieved or satisfied with completing something difficult, but actually joyful about being alive and engaged with my life. I couldn't identify a specific moment in recent memory. I tried to remember the last meaningful conversation I had had with someone I cared about, not about logistics or problems or plans, but about thoughts, feelings, dreams, fears, the kinds of conversations that create real intimacy and connection. I couldn't think of one. I realized that I had become so efficient at managing my life that I had stopped actually living it. I was accomplishing impressive things, but I wasn't experiencing them. I was surrounded by people, but I wasn't really connecting with them. I was working toward important goals, but I had lost touch with why they had seemed important to me originally. That night, I went home and looked at my children, really looked at them, and I realized that I had been present physically but absent emotionally for most of their recent lives. I had been thinking about work during family dinners, checking messages during conversations, and treating time with them as a break from more important activities rather than as the most important activity itself. I understood that I was in danger of missing their childhoods not because I was traveling or working excessive hours, but because I had trained myself to be mentally elsewhere, even when I was physically present. I was living my life like a task to be managed, rather than an experience to be enjoyed and treasured. But what shook me most deeply was a conversation I had with my son X the following weekend. We were supposed to be playing together, building something with blocks, but I kept glancing at my phone and thinking about Monday's meetings. Finally, He put down his blocks and looked at me with those serious eyes that children have when they're trying to understand something important. "Dad," he said, "are you sad about something? You look like you're always thinking about something that makes you worried." His question hit me like a physical blow, because it revealed that my 7-year-old son had been watching me live my life in a state of constant anxiety and distraction, and he was concerned about my well-being in ways that I hadn't been concerned about it myself. I realized that I was modeling for him a way of being in the world that treated every moment as a problem to be solved or an obstacle to be overcome, rather than as an opportunity to be present and engaged with whatever was happening right now. When I asked him what he meant, he said, "Even when you're playing with me, it feels like part of you is somewhere else, like you're here but you're also not here." That observation from a child forced me to confront the fact that I had become addicted to a way of thinking that made it impossible for me to be fully present for anything, including the people and experiences that mattered most to me. I was always mentally preparing for the next thing, reviewing the last thing, worrying about something that might happen, or trying to solve a problem that didn't need to be solved in that moment. I had lost the ability to simply be where I was, with whoever I was with, doing whatever I was doing, without my mind constantly pulling me towards some other time and place. This realization was devastating because it showed me that I was squandering the most precious gift anyone has, the present moment, and that I was teaching my children to do the same thing by example. The warning I'm giving you is that you might be making the same mistake I was making, living your life so focused on managing it efficiently that you're missing the opportunity to actually experience it meaningfully. You might be so busy meeting obligations and pursuing goals that you're not noticing how little joy, connection, and satisfaction you're actually experiencing in your daily life. You might have become so skilled at being productive that you've forgotten how to be present. Here's what I think you need to do to protect yourself from this danger, based on what I've learned from changing my own approach to life and from watching other people rediscover what it means to live with intention and presence. First, start paying attention to your inner experience throughout the day. Notice how you feel during different activities. Notice which conversations energize you and which drain you. Notice when you feel most alive and engaged, and when you feel most disconnected and empty. Most people go through their days on autopilot, responding to demands and expectations without ever checking in with themselves about how they're actually experiencing their lives. This self-awareness is the foundation for making choices that serve your well-being rather than just your efficiency. Second, begin making small changes that prioritize presence over productivity. Put away your phone during meals with family or friends. Take a few minutes each day to do something that brings you joy rather than just accomplishment. Have at least one conversation each week that goes deeper than logistics and surface topics. These changes might seem insignificant, but they represent a fundamental shift from living your life as a series of tasks to be completed to experiencing your life as a series of moments to be appreciated and relationships to be nurtured. Third, question the assumptions you've made about what you should be doing with your time and energy. Many of the obligations and expectations that feel non-negotiable are actually choices you're making based on priorities that you might not have examined consciously. Ask yourself whether the activities that consume most of your time are actually contributing to the kind of life you want to be living, or whether you're maintaining them out of habit, fear, or unexamined assumptions about what success looks like. Fourth, deliberately cultivate relationships and activities that provide genuine meaning and satisfaction rather than just convenience or advancement. Spend time with people who see and appreciate who you are rather than just what you can do for them. Engage in work that feels personally meaningful rather than just professionally advantageous. This doesn't necessarily mean making dramatic changes to your career or relationships, but it does mean being more intentional about how you invest your emotional energy and attention. The danger I'm warning you about is real and immediate, but it's also completely preventable if you're willing to acknowledge that the way you're currently living might not be serving your deepest needs and highest aspirations. You have the power to choose presence over distraction, connection over isolation, meaning over achievement, and fulfillment over mere success. But you have to make these choices consciously and repeatedly, because the default patterns of modern life will constantly pull you back toward the efficient but unsatisfying ways of living that are slowly draining the life out of your actual life. The warning I'm giving you could save your life not by protecting you from external danger, but by helping you recognize and change patterns that are preventing you from experiencing the joy, meaning, and connection that make life worth living. You don't have to live in a state of constant stress and distraction. You don't have to sacrifice your relationships and inner peace for external achievement. You don't have to accept emotional numbness and spiritual emptiness as the price of managing the demands of modern life. But you do have to choose differently, starting today, if you want to protect yourself from the slow-motion destruction of everything that makes life precious and meaningful. The people who will thrive in the years ahead are not necessarily those who achieve the most or who manage their lives most efficiently, but those who learn to live with intention, presence, and genuine connection to themselves and others. I want to tell you about someone who taught me this lesson in the most unexpected way. Last year, I met an elderly man named Robert while visiting my mother in the hospital. He was in his 80s, sitting quietly by his wife's bedside in the room next to hers. What struck me immediately was how peaceful he seemed, despite being in one of the most stressful environments imaginable. When I spoke with him during one of my daily visits, I learned that he had been a factory worker his entire life, never achieving what most people would consider remarkable success. He had no advanced degrees, no impressive career achievements, no wealth to speak of, but as he talked about his life, I realized I was listening to one of the wisest and most content people I had ever encountered. "You know what I learned?" he told me, his weathered hands holding his wife's gently. "I learned that every day you get to choose between being busy and being alive. Most people choose busy because it feels important, but being alive means paying attention to the person next to you, to the food you're eating, to the way the light comes through the window." He had spent 50 years married to the same woman, had raised 4 children who visited him daily, and had maintained friendships that spanned decades. When I asked him what he was most proud of, he didn't mention any achievement or accomplishment. He said, "I am proud that when my children think of their childhood, they remember their father being there, really there, not just in the room but paying attention to them." This man understood something that had taken me decades to begin learning: that the quality of your life is determined not by what you accomplish, but by how fully you experience whatever you're doing. Whoever you're with, wherever you are, share this warning with someone who might be living their life so focused on managing it that they're missing the opportunity to actually experience it meaningfully. Subscribe if these conversations help you think about what it means to live with intention rather than just efficiency, and how to protect yourself from patterns that are incompatible with human flourishing. And remember, the greatest danger to your well-being is not any external threat, but the possibility that you could spend your entire life being so busy managing it that you forget to actually live it. How seriously will you take this warning, and what will you change starting today to ensure